let's go.
Hi, Kat Chancellor here with Stamp Art Connection and StampArtConnection.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I have a really fun card to share with you today. This is a pop-up card. When you open it up, you're going to have this wonderful little scene here of the bubbling cauldron and the little cat, as well as some books, some potion books stacked, and some vellum flasks. I'm going to be using several products. Some of them are going to be retired, and I will try to give you some options for what is in the annual catalog if you're new to Stampin' Up. But those of you that have been Stampin' Up enthusiasts for many years will recognize some of these items. So this is going to be the Potions and Spells bundle, and this is available right now as one of the online exclusives. It includes this stamp set as well as all these lovely dies that will be used to create our project. What you're going to need to put this card together, you're going to need a basic card blank, and this is out of basic white, and it was cut 11 and then it was scored at 5.5 to create a landscape card blank. For the outside, you're going to need a layer of black cardstock that's cut at 5 1/4 by 4, and then we're going to layer Highland Heather cut at 5 by 3 3/4. You're then going to cut out of basic white cardstock this cauldron using the dies that are part of the bundle, and I cut out the little handles using crushed curry, and the bubbles and the wonderful little spillover here with Granny Apple Green. Now the background is going to be stamped with these stamps double toil and trouble, as well as some of these bubbles that are going to create this nice little background pattern. For the inside of the card, you're going to need a piece of basic black cardstock, and this is cut at 5 1/4 by 4, and I'm using smoky slate, and this is cut at 5 by 5 1/4 by 4 as well. Now, to kind of create our texture for this background, I'm using this stencil that it's retired, and I don't recall what the name of it is. I'll try to look it up, but it's kind of a tree stencil that I'm going to take my basic black background, and I'm going to create this wonderful little tree spooky background. And I'm going to do that with some of the Stampin' Up embossing paste, and you'll need the tools for that. But I'll also suggest that you can use the Stampin' Up shimmer paste if you want kind of a shimmery effect. And this is just some of the other backgrounds that I stamp, because once you kind of decide how many cards you want to do, go ahead and cut them and then sit down and do your embossing and put them aside, because these will have to dry. So I went ahead and stamped, or rather I went ahead and used the embossing paste on these backgrounds, and it doesn't matter if there's like little imperfections, because I think it all kind of adds to the beauty, the texture of the card that we're trying to create. But I do want to also suggest that you can use something like this Distress texture paste, and this is a crackle paste, and this is what I used for this card. And you can see that once you put the embossing paste down, it creates a nice crackle effect, and I really kind of liked that look. So that's what I'm going to use for the card that I'm going to be demonstrating for you today. You're also going to need for the bottom of the card, I'm using the brick and mortar 3D embossing folder. Now there are other options such as 3D exposed brick embossing folder to also give kind of the look of the you know, inside of the witch's, kind of the witch's den there. So there's this is retired, but here's a current option that you can use. And I think I'm going to try the current option just to kind of give it just a different look. I've got some measurements for the mechanism, and I will give you that as we continue to make the card. But I wanted to show you, for this cauldron here, I'm just going to take a piece of basic white cardstock, and I'm using some Distress Oxide ink to kind of give it kind of that look so that I can use this to stamp my sentiment. So that's just kind of something extra. You can use basic black or you can use a darker gray if you want to, but that's kind of what I chose. Now what's really neat about this set, I'm going to pull out some pieces, is that it comes with the dies that you can cut out these cauldrons after you stamp them. And I'm just going to show you, I went ahead and I colored quite a few, and then I'm going to show you my Stampin Blends colors that I used. Here are the different cauldrons that I just went ahead and I stamped using basic black ink, and then I colored them using these Stampin Blends. And I used dark and light Blackberry Bliss for these. I went ahead and I used dark smoky slate, and I believe I have a gray granite and a light smoky slate. I also used, this is light basic black and dark basic black, which I believe, so this is kind of our smoky slate, and then this is our light and dark basic black. And then for the handles to our cauldron, I just simply used light and dark daffodil. And I kind of used a little bit of the light and dark pumpkin pie just to kind of accent a little bit of the side. Now for the bubbles, I went ahead and I just used some Pool Party and some boho blue and just kind of created that for the bubbles, which you can also cut out, as you can see here. You can also, so those are our cauldrons, and that's what you want to go ahead and create. Then you have your bubbles, and you have your black cats. Again, I like to go ahead and I like to cut out all my pieces and parts in advance so that I have them at the ready when I'm ready to begin to put my card together. So here are all the black cats. Again, I used the light and dark smoky slate, and I just kind of accented them a little bit. They have kind of yellow eyes, and then I also gave them like a little red nose. Now some are cut with the dies, and you can see when you cut them with the dies, it's going to give you a white background. So depending on what kind of effect that you want to create, you can either leave it like that, or in my case, as you can see here, I went ahead and I fussy cut them. And when I fussy cut them, this is a technique I've shown you before. You can take a basic black Stampin' Right marker, and you can just go along the edges here to kind of ensure that none of that white shows. And you can just go ahead and kind of do that. This is another technique I've shown you on some of my other cards, and it just makes it kind of really kind of looks like it's a real figure as opposed to a paper figure. So you can kind of see the difference here between the two. This one was cut by the dies, and this one I fussy cut. So you have some choices on how you want to put them together. Okay, so these are the cats. And I'm going to put them in my little muffin tin. Here are my cauldrons. I'm going to put these in my little muffin tin. I have various bubbles. I think I used bubble bath, and then I also used, let's see, I have bubble bath, and then I used a little bit of the dark flirty flamingo for that, as well as the Pool Party and the boho blue for my bubbles. And I have more bubbles there, and I have some more bubbles there. Now they have a little crow, and I also stamped and cut out the crow. And I did the same thing. I used the same colors that I did for the cat, and I just used some of the either the pumpkin pie or the crushed curry. Here's the pumpkin pie, and I believe this is the crushed curry that I used for his beak. And I did go in kind of inside this, and I believe I did that. I basically cut off the legs, went inside, and then I re-glued it on the back because I kind of wanted it a little bit more, you can see, without any of the white showing. So it kind of depends. I get a little bit more elaborate, but I do that for those of you that are a little bit more advanced in your stamping. But any kind of technique or any level of detail that you want to add, it's your card. You do it your way. You do you, and I'll do me. This is an example of what the die cuts out, and then this is my fussy cutting. Again, I'm using my basic black marker to kind of go around the edges, and you see kind of how nice that really looks. Okay, so those are my crows. Now this crow, I lost the leg, so I just basically put him on top of another crow to just kind of give him a little bit of a 3D effect. So that's another way you can approach it. And here's the crow I have yet to cut out, but I'm going to go ahead and put that in my muffin tin. Now I did stamp books, and there are a number of books that you can stamp. And for this card, what I did is, and again, all the colors that I just explained here are colors that I used for these books. And here you can see I used some, I believe this is Mossy Meadow. So I did use some Mossy Meadow here for my books. And let me just show you. You know, I have some Highland Heather and some of the Blackberry Bliss, and then just some Daffodil Delight, and then I did use a little bit of blue around some of the edges, and then Mossy Meadow for the top. So I made several stacks, and here's one that I have colored, but I haven't added the other color. I'll do that here in a minute. But I just wanted to kind of show you, you want to stamp quite a few of these. So I'm going to take the dark Highland Heather here, and I'm going to
gather round, it's time to create. Stamp our connection, it's never too late. With colors and tools, we're making it bright. Crafting together from morning till night. Let your imagination soar. Every card's an open door to a world of endless dreams, where nothing's as it seems. Stamp our connection, feel the spark. In every project we leave our mark. With every card a piece of heart. Come join the fun, let's make some art. Cutting and stamping, blending the hues.
Okay, so there I've cut those out, and I'm going to go ahead and put those in my muffin tin. And I want to show you that when we start assembling the inside, we're going to take several of these. We're going to take two of the books, we're going to stack them, we're going to cut them, and then what we're going to put on top of them are going to be some bottles, some flasks that I have cut out of vellum, and I also kind of used some of my holographic paper to make that flask look like it's half full, and this one I cut out of holographic paper to make it look like it's full of green. And one of the interesting dies that's in here that I couldn't figure out what it was for, and I'm gonna point this out right now, but this is the die, and what this die does is it creates the pouring of the liquid that you could and I'm going to show you. You could use this to like you're pouring this inside the cauldron, or in the case of our example, wherever I put the example, oh, you could do something. You could do something like that where you're pouring it inside. So that's what that, and I just was kind of playing around with that using the vellum. So hopefully that inspires you with some ideas of how you can use the little flask pieces. Now another piece that's in here is this broomstick. It comes with a broom bottom, and then it comes with a broomstick. So with that, I created these, and what I used is I had to use two sheets of cardstock just so that these are a little bit sturdy. But I used the paper, this designer series paper that's wood grained. I used that to create my broomsticks, and then I just used a piece of daffodil delight or crushed curry, and then I just used sponge dauber with the ink to kind of give it a little bit more dimension. And then you can see right around the edge I used a glue dot, and I added some linen thread that I had in my craft room. So this is something, and I didn't add it to my card, but it's certainly something that you could add somehow. You could add this element, and I think it's going to look good right there. So I might add that, but I just wanted to show you that these dies do make these neat little brooms, and this is kind of the technique, the paper that I used to create the broomsticks. Now I do want to point out that there are other dies out there for your background. So let me just talk about some options. If you just wanted to have a plain background that you either embossed with some kind of embossing folder, or you wanted to do some blending, and that might be an idea for one of our cards. You can use something like this new set that just came out, and this is an online exclusive called Frosted Forest. And as you can see in here, you have kind of a neat, scary tree that you could use. You've got some scary branches here that you could use as well for a background. So that's something to consider as well, and let's see if that inspires us to do something different. It also has some wonderful masks that accompany this kind of cool bundle altogether, but this is part of the online exclusives. And lastly, you can make a witch's hat. So they have the die to cut the witch's hat, and they have a little piece to cut the band. And what I did with the band is I just used some of my holographic cardstock, and that's my witch's hat. The Deckled Rectangle Dies is what I used to cut out the Happy Halloween, and I'll show you which size. But I did several sizes because I wanted to put a placard here so that I could write my sentiment as part of my card. So you'll need the deckled rectangles as well. I think I have covered everything that is part of creating this card. So grab your potions and spells and your dies, and let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to begin by creating our backgrounds. I'm using my glass matte, my media matte, and some of the Distress Oxide in Salty Ocean and Seedless Preserves. This is by Ranger. I'm using one of their blending sponges with the salty ocean first. Then I'm going to switch my sponge and I'm going to use the seedless preserves. And lastly, I'm going to add my Distress Oxide black soot to the bottom, and this is going to give us a really nice kind of effect. I'm just going to clean off my media mat, and I'm going to off camera spray my background with Distress Spray Stain in black soot, and then I'm going to grab a paintbrush because my spray isn't working, and it's got to be a very long spray paintbrush, and I'm going to dip it into the brush pewter Distress Spray Stain and just kind of splatter it to my background just to kind of create a really nice kind of midnight effect. Now I'm going to create my other background, and I'm using my stencil, and I'm going to use Distress Texture Paste, and it's the Crackle Paste. And I'm just going to spread it as thinly as possible across my stencil using my palette knife, and when it dries it's going to have that nice crackle effect for my kind of my spooky trees. And then immediately I'm going to put my stencil and my tools in water so that they don't harden. And then I'm going to set both of my backgrounds off to the side so they can dry while I begin to cut and assemble the rest of my card. Now for the other layer inside, for the inside of the card, which is basically going to be the floor of the little witch's chamber, I'm using smoky slate, and I'm going to emboss with the exposed brick 3D embossing folder, and these are both cut at 5 3/4 by 5. I'm then going to turn them over so that you kind of see the brick facing. I'm going to use a tool and kind of rough up the edges because I kind of want it to have kind of a, kind of rough look. And then I'm going to take my Distress Oxide, and with a sponge dauber I'm just going to very lightly kind of sponge across my surface to kind of bring out that brick look and just add a little bit more accent. Now that my insides are dry, I'm going to go ahead and take my basic white card blank, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere them to the inside of the card. And I'm using some of my favorite 3-in-1 by Beacon, and it just makes the card just a lot more stiffer and just be able to kind of handle some of the pressure that we're going to be putting on it, since we're going to make this a pop-up card, and we're going to have some other pieces that are going to be glued to both the top and bottom. And then we're going to go ahead and build our mechanism. Now, taking a piece of basic black cardstock, I'm cutting this 1 1/2 by 3 inches. I'm going to cut a couple of them for the 2 cards that I'm going to be demonstrating. I also have 1/2 inch that's going to be cut by 2 inches. I'm going to need 2 of these mechanisms. One's going to be for the cauldron and the other one's going to be for the books. I'm then going to score at 1/2, 1 1/2, and 2 inches, and then the smaller one is going to be scored at 1/2, 1, and 1 1/2. And that's going to create our smaller mechanism. I'm then going to go ahead and miter those edges and ensure that all my folds are very crisp using our bone folder. To apply the mechanism to the inside of the card, you want to fold the mechanism so that the tabs are on the back, and you want to make sure that you put glue all the way to the edges and align that middle crease to the middle crease of your card, and then it will perfectly open up. So fold those tabs to the back, ensure that you have glue all around to the edges of those tabs, put the crease at the middle of the crease on your base card, and then fold over. Next, I'm going to just lay out my cauldrons, and I'm using some mini glue dimensionals to kind of put my bubbles behind the cauldron, and I've left enough space underneath the bubbles after I've stamped them and I fussy cut them to have room for the mini dimensionals in order to adhere to the lip of the cauldron, so it looks like that's bubbling over. Simply add a thin layer of glue to the front surface of your mechanism and place the cauldron so that it will fold neatly. Now, using a dimensional on the back of your cat, you want to place it on the cauldron, careful to ensure that the cat will fold neatly when your card is folded over. So it may need to be placed a little bit higher than you would think, simply because the legs need to clear the bottom of your card. Now we're going to add the smaller mechanism to the front of the cauldron, and this is where we're going to apply the books. So when it stands up, you have the books and the flasks in front of the cauldron, creating our pop-up. Now it's the same principle. The crease is going to have to sit right at the crease of where the black mechanism met the bottom of your card. So you want to again ensure that your edges are mitered, and if you need to shorten them a little bit, go ahead and do that so that that crease is right at the crease of your black mechanism, like that. And then once you're sure that it fits nicely, you're going to go ahead and add some glue, and you're going to want to use your finger to spread the glue thinly to the entire surface of that tab that is going to adhere to both the top and bottom of your card, and it's going to create your mechanism. And hold it in place, let it dry, and then you can see that there it is. There's our mechanism, and it folds nicely. To assemble the next portion of our pop-up, you're going to stamp 2 book stacks per card. For one, you're going to cut it in half, and that is going to create the bottom books that a flask will sit on, and then you will put the next piece on top of the other stack to create a higher stack of books for the other flask to sit on. You will also make sure all your edges are fussy cut, and that if there's any white edges, I would use a blender pen just to make sure that everything blends nicely with your background. I used some small pieces of basic white cardstock, just some scraps, to kind of connect the 2 book stacks together to create my taller pile of books. I used a dimensional on the corner of the smaller books to adhere it to the front of my taller book stack, and that's going to kind of give us a little bit more dimension before I add the vellum flasks. After you've cut your vellum flasks, just adhere them to the back of each one of your stack using a very thin line of glue. add a thin layer to the front of your mechanism, making sure that you kind of spread it nicely with your finger and adjust before it dries to create our second pop-up layer for our card. For my card, I just chose a Deckled Rectangles size that fit nicely, and I stamped it with the Happy Halloween sentiment that came with the stamp set. For your card, you can choose any size or shape you'd like and stamp it with any sentiment you would like for your card. Now I'm stamping the backgrounds for the front of the cards. I'm using the Highland Heather cardstock that's cut at 5 3¾ because it will be layered on a piece of black cardstock cut at 5 1/4 by 4. But I'm going to begin with Highland Heather ink, and I'm just going to pick just one of the sentiments that comes from the cardstock along with some of the bubbles that I've kind of placed in a random design, and I'm just going to go ahead and stamp all the way across. I'm using a sheet just to make sure it protects my stamping piercing mat that I'm using, since these are photopolymer stamps. I'm just going to be cutting all the pieces and parts for the cauldrons. I'm using Granny Apple Green for the boil over and bubbles. I'm using crushed curry for the handles, and the cauldron is cut out of basic white. I recommend after you've cut out the cauldrons to go ahead and stamp your sentiment in the middle, and then you can use your sponge dauber to go ahead and sponge color around the edges of your cauldron. Now I used my Cosmic Shimmer, or you could use your Tombow to glue your layer onto your black cardstock before you put it onto your base card. And in this case, I like to use my Beacon 3-in-1 because that dries really hard and it does not cause your cardstock to warp. When you have a card that has so many layers, and in this case it's a pop-up card and it puts a lot of stress on the cardstock, I recommend using the Beacon 3-in-1 Advanced Craft Glue. Well, there you have it. It's not too many steps, and I think they're pretty clear that you can make a double layer pop-up card using the Potion and Spells bundle and really create a wow card for the Halloween season. If you haven't already, please hit like. All products are available in my online store. This is an online exclusive bundle. Go to my blog for project details and other information. If you're looking for a demo, please consider joining my team. Consider joining as a hobbyist for $99 and get a 20% discount. Especially now with the new catalog coming out for the holidays, it'll save you some money. If you are a demo and you like my content, please support my channel by hitting like, share, and leave a comment. This is Kat Chancellor with Stamp Art Connection and StampArtConnection.com. Happy stamping.